LSU beat South Carolina 36-33, trailed 17-0. I was at this game yesterday. The whole new Saturday tour took us to the sidelines of Williams-Brice Stadium. This was our highest rated game of the year so far. A 4.5 Chalai Classic. Really good one unfolded. Now, I hesitated to give 5 because you give 5 Chalai that early in the season and, well, you've set the standard. And I think we can do better than this game, but it was still really entertaining to watch. It is wild how much had to happen for LSU to win this game. If you watched it, if you attended it, you know exactly what I mean. South Carolina's up 17-0. All right, so you're thinking to yourself, this is everything LSU could not afford. I was talking to a couple of LSU staffers before the game. They hadn't played there since '08. So outside of like Michael Bonnet, no one on that staff was there the last time LSU went up there. And I was telling them, hey, score early. Score early. You don't want to see what this place is like if you don't score early. So they proceed to go and dig themselves a 17-0 hole. Place is on fire. It's living up to everything people like me said it was, and the nation's eyes are upon it. And you got Fowler and Herbstreit calling the game, and LSU wins. LSU finds a way to win the game. Road comebacks in major college football are one of the most insane things to witness because LSU was flawed 9 ways from Saturday yesterday, and they found a way to win anyway. And it would just shock you, I think. Many of you go to these games, but if you could just, stand on the field, if you soak all that in and you realize like how mentally rattled the normal person would be if you're down 7-0 and it's a key third down, much less being down 17-0. Because basically everyone who's doubted you, if you're LSU, after the USC game, everyone who doubted you, the individual voices that kind of coalesce into just a sea of noise that is 80,000+ people in a stadium, it's like that noise is a bunch of doubters yelling in your ear. That's what a normal person would hear. A normal person would have all kinds of panic thoughts running through their mind. And I'm over there on the LSU sideline, and they're like, certainly not at ease, but they weren't panicked. That's a credit. That's a credit. They did a lot wrong yesterday. They did a lot wrong to dig that hole, but that's a credit. There are padlock stats and there are bad luck stats. Bad luck stats are very misleading because if I told you Friday, in a game that we thought neither team was going to run the ball all that effectively, that South Carolina was going to put up 243 on the ground, that LSU's offensive line was going to get worked in the process, you would tell me South Carolina is going to win this game, and I would agree with you. And that's not even to know that they were going to go up 17-0. That's just to know that they're going to have a really good day running the ball, including explosive plays like the one you're seeing right now. Rocket Sanders finds his explosive gear, and I feel like there are a couple different ways you can go with this. If you're an LSU fan, and I know many of you, I have spoken to you. I had a couple of notable, high-profile LSU fans who shall remain nameless, who even in what should have been the thrill of victory were very negative towards the team. And I think that's just because expectations were high. My expectations for LSU weren't high this year, as many of you know, because you hated on me for it in the preseason. So I view these games differently. Like, this is a game LSU is just flat out supposed to lose. Once it starts the way it does, LSU's supposed to lose. They're supposed to leave their 1-2. So they don't. They leave their 2-1. Offensive line was bad. They couldn't run the ball great, although, I think they got just enough in the ground game. Nuss had a good game, but even he made some critical mistakes. They're not overly explosive at wide receiver. They couldn't stop the run. Tackling still an issue. So there are a million different problems you could have. But I expected a lot of those problems with LSU. Maybe not the offensive line struggling like that, but I expected a lot of those problems. And they've had critical injury too. So I look at it and I think, good for LSU. Like, wow, it's a very imperfect team. It was always going to be an imperfect team. But Brian Kelly, I'm impressed by the resolve of the team. And what you do with a talented team is the more runway you can buy yourself, you never know what can happen. You may think you've got LSU figured out. I don't even think that staff believes they've got their own team figured out. So I doubt we've got them figured out. But you at least buy yourself time to figure some things out. Every team's flawed. You got to figure out the best way you can go about winning football games. And I don't know what they learned about themselves yesterday, but if you watched it along with me, there were so many ebbs and flows. It was a horribly called game, officiating-wise. I'll get to that in a second. But there were so many different moments where I find myself talking about this dude who's on the screen right now, Garrett Nussmeier. It's his game, 24-40, 285, It's a dude from the class of 2021. He's stuck around. He's the starting quarterback for LSU, and he gets his moment. If that never happens again, he'll be able to look back on that day the rest of his life, which I'm happy for because I'm happy for guys like that who stick around. Now, maybe there's much more to his story. I'm just saying at least he gets one chapter that he can always look back on, maybe more to come. If South Carolina, however, does not lose Lenora Sellers in this game, you guys are right. They probably win the game. And I'll do you one better because I hardly ever agree with this take, but South Carolina fans would be in both of your ears if you allow them today saying that officials cost them this football game. I think you're right. I think they did. It was a horrifically officiated game. And that was not the only place across this great sport of ours yesterday where officiating either heavily impacted or may have outright decided outcomes of games. It's football. I know it's so easy to say, and there's another thing you can say. Just like if I were an LSU fan watching this right now, I'd say, hey, we had some calls go against us. You sure did. Also, you could say, well, it's still up to South Carolina to execute. Shane Beamer said all the right things today. He has to say that. But I guarantee you they lit up the league office. In fact, I know they lit up the league office, as they should, because they probably got a game taken from them. I can't prove that. I don't know if you change a call how the rest of a game plays out. None of us know that. But 13 penalties for 123 yards. Some of that's on them, and it's inexcusable. I don't think all of it's on them. I hate, on one hand, that you watch a game be put in the hands of officials. It's not the way it's supposed to work. And I don't mean all that, well, they can't make that call in that spot. I mean some of the calls they made shouldn't be made in any spot. I'm not a dude who says you got to swallow the whistle if you're the official there. No, the rules are the rules. But when they're applied wrong, I don't care if it's midway through the first quarter or late fourth quarter, and especially when you're changing the outcome of games, it's garbage. We don't play 162 of these, by the way. It's not Major League Baseball. It's not a missed call at the plate, but we'll get them tomorrow night in the second game of a 4-game set in July. You had one shot at LSU coming to town. You got one shot with College Game Day in town. And it probably got decided by folks not in black and garnet and not in purple and gold and white. This, however, was a really good game, back and forth. I also think with Shane Beamer in South Carolina, they had a ton of official visitors there. They had to turn some away. They've got a tough stretch coming up. They got to play Ole Miss. They got to play Bama. They got to go to Oklahoma. They got A&M. They got Missouri. They got at Clemson. They've got a tough stretch as well. 5 wins to 7 wins is probably still where you'd project them landing, somewhere in that 3-game stretch or 3-game variance, I guess. But what they can do is they can point to this result and they can say, hey, we didn't get blown out. So we've been preaching, as every staff does that's not there yet. They preach to their incoming classes and their prospective recruits, you're what can get us there. Well, if you lose 36-13, you can't really say we're one class away. But if you lose 36-33 and have them on the ropes the entire game and have the officials maybe snatch it out of your hands, you can point to those kids. You can point and say, look at Dylan Stewart already out there making an impact. We started him as a true freshman, and he's living up to the billing. You could be next, and if we get a few more like you, then you never know what changes in the future. But I'm excited to see what happens with LSU because this is a unique situation where they won a game, they won a really big game, but in the odds to win the SEC, they're still 8th. And a lot of their fan base still has a ton of questions, as you should. I do as well. So there's still a lot of doubt around this team. They went up there and were on the ropes with South Carolina. That's a game in the preseason that you look at and you say, that'll be a nice little test for us, but we'll win it. But then when you lost to USC in week 1, all bets were off. But they went up there and they got to win. I got to tell you this, though, before we move on. Out of all the tour stops that we'll make this year, and out of all the stops we've made so far, LSU at South Carolina, Williams-Brice Stadium yesterday, high noon kickoff. This was our most successful tour stop. The whole new Saturday tour rolled in there Thursday night. We spent all day Friday there. Obviously, we were on the field for yesterday's game. But I went over there early because we got summoned to come over there early. First off, the mayor, the literal mayor of Columbia hit us up. Mayor Rickenman, there he is right there. We met with him Friday. A lot of what we discussed was off the record in nature, as politics often are. And when you get the convergence of college football and politics, mainly I was just asking him his advice on how I could become commissioner. But met with him, a big fan of the show, his entire office, as it turns out. And then later that day, Where do I go? I go from City Hall over to meet with the ladies at Pout. Pout Cosmetics welcomed us, courtesy of Alyssa Lang arranging all this. Got a text from her the other day. She said, I got a crazy hookup I can get you in Columbia. I said, really? And she said, really? And this was it. They gave me so much free product over there. TSA pulled me aside at the airport, not because I had anything over 4 ounces, but because I was so loaded down with sample sizes of stuff that they said, this has got to be a trafficking situation. I'm trafficking in good skin. That's all I'm doing. You know, if that's my biggest crime, then sue me. That's not what I'm looking for. That's the opposite of what I want. But I appreciate them. I appreciate them. I got what is called a hydrofacial, immunity to all this, obviously. Never gotten one before. Probably will come back. I had to get out of there quick because Holly Rowe was in right after me. So that was the hot spot to be in Columbia. And then, of course, yesterday. What a day at Williams-Brice. The student section, I'm pretty convinced, Colin and Jesse, 80+% of enrolled students at the University of South Carolina watched the show. Like, intimately familiar with the show, like mentioning specific things about the show. So a lot of pictures were taken, a lot of meetups. Gelby with the B-roll. Thank you, Gelby, coming through with the B-roll. So appreciate the staff there. Man, what a time. What a day. This is what it's like when we go on the road. Management's up in the suites, sipping on game cocktails, as they would call them there. Not us, not us. We're down in the trenches. We're with our people. These are our people. You are our people, so we appreciate it. Fun day in Columbia. I hate it didn't turn out better for you guys, but fun day.